Firstly, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
No, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me on your content streams.
So I've gone through your profile and I came to know that you are CEO and founder of your own company and you worked in different positions. So I thought to tell about you and the work experience of yours and about the work that you are doing right now to my audience.
Yeah, sure. So I actually was a National Geographic explorer first. I began my path by doing mass media communications and taking on corporate social responsibility, looking at ways in which brands, governments, and nonprofits could affect change systematically on the ground, and to be able to quantitatively and qualitatively assess whether that impact was realized and to be able to communicate that to target demographics that they're going after. And the problem in this space, primarily when you're trying to do good in the world, is that most people don't know how to go about systematically measuring it, how to scale that impact, and how to relay it. And that's where technology comes into play, because there's only so much we can do as human beings. And to be able to affect change in mass scale, you require the resources and infrastructure that can only be availed through technology. And that's where, applications come into play. That's where looking at drones and deploying things that have been made available to us to enable such impacts being realized on the ground in real time, and then being able to communicate that to people anywhere, right? And so that took me down the path of having to work with nonprofits and brands consistently and looking at ways in which we could streamline what we're going after and what was the most effective way to ensure that solution was both democratically available as well as effectively and efficiently scalable. And so when you're looking at trying to galvanize a large demographic turnover, which is to say an entire consumer market needs to change its behavior or consumption habit in order for a certain throughput to be realized as the end outcome, you need to look at what is the way in which that demographic is going to be reached, right? Like, are they more amenable to being called? Do they respond to direct mailing? Do they respond to, and so those were the past techniques, but as generations have evolved, so has the technology, and therefore how we can reach them, right? So ultimately, we were in the information age before, now we're in the communications age. And so it really is about how are we evolving communication. And we've come to a point of like Web3, which is semantic web, where the information can be sieved through and cross-pollinated, collated by the technology itself. Like we're trying to like weed out the need for human inefficiency in all of this, which is great. So I think we're at a place where so much of the places where there can be mistakes, oversights, or the lack of data throughput in the right way has been eliminated. The human error component has been eliminated to a large degree. Not to say that it can't still exist in many ways, because ultimately, even if you're looking at blockchain technology, it's just a database, and we do have to have manual inputs, and people can skew the system. We can still make anything that's out there in the world be in the favor of few and in the disfavor of many. So really, while we're trying to allow for an egalitarian approach to enable social good or environmental good in the world, technology can still be manipulated and used for the more nefarious purposes as well. So that's something to be mindful of. So I'm never saying that technology is a be all end all. I'm just saying don't blame the tool, blame the carpenter, right? Because the end outcome is because of the carpenter's mind. That's what he's created. But we often say that something is bad and blame the technology itself, and we throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is what we've done with renewable energies. People blame that because we're mining rare earths. We blame blockchain because it's consuming huge amounts of power. But everything has like a growth curve to become more streamlined, to be able to deliver a solution set in a more effective manner. And we're not patient to allow for that growth curve to occur. And we don't subsidize that in the right ways to ensure that the technology can move past the nascent stages into being more streamlined in its competency and execution, right? So I think in the ways that I've come about technology in what I do, it has been a constant battle, like to not use technology because it has so many nefarious applications. Like if we were to use drones to survey a population, it could be hacked into, and then poachers might know from the sound, or they might know by hacking into the feed that that drone actually just got footage of elephants in this particular place, and maybe they can go and poach those animals, right? Or if you are securing a parameter with a specific application, then again, can it be penetrated by those who would leverage that data set to their own benefit? If you make data available publicly, can that be used by people who want to, again, use that to their benefit in a myopic capacity? Would they be enabled as well? And they would be. And so it's a constant back and forth between trying to do good in the world and using these incredible resources that can scale that solution set in the right way without feeling too demoralized or deflated by the fact that it can also perpetrate many evils in the world. And so for me, the reason I've started this company is because I do genuinely believe that technology can allow for everyone to have daily access towards doing good in the world. And especially as consumers, and no matter what we do, every day that we wake up, we have impact on the world around us. And if we are able to be more mindful of that impact, then we can put it to positive ends, right? So I think that it really is about contouring how we show up by being transparent in our footprint and being willing to be held accountable when that transparency shows that we're not doing the best that we can be doing.
I got you. So you started working as a managing director in Eurotech. It was your first job.
Yeah, so my father passed away when I was 23, and I had no choice but to take on his company and help sell or do something with it, right? Like either sell the company off to a third party or and we ultimately did that because at that juncture, when I took it on, we lost, like it was right before the recession hit. We lost a lot of the subsidies that we had in the markets that we were catering to. And intuitively, I just felt guided that it wouldn't have the potential that it had when my father was alive after he passed. And so what that technology company did was to allow for the scaling of the production aspect of yarn, of textiles, and then to streamline manufacturing by ensuring that everything was sensor based. It would tell you when you needed to have input of chemical dispersants, when you needed reagents involved in the manufacturing process of that gray good. So since everything was technologically integrated, all you had to do was be responsive to that. But what that, again, talking about, what remains in the blind spot, back then, we had these incredible technologies that couldn't deal with everyday aspects in the context that it was being instituted in. For instance, if we deployed the machines in Bangladesh or India, we saw that they had power failures, like power outage is pretty common. And to run a large-scale machine-based factory that was on a power outage consistently caused a lot of disruptions in how that machine could deliver the solution set, right? So again, it's like sometimes you can be ahead of the times. You could be out of context. It may not be viable in one place, even though it was a fantastic innovation in a different context in a different country. So it really is about also knowing your markets. And because of the various issues we saw with water and power, it wasn't really a viable recourse for me to pursue. But also, I think the textile industry pollutes extensively. And although that was the job I inherited at that juncture, it's not what I felt called to. So I felt like I needed a new path, and that's what I pursued. So awesome. I quit that job. I quit my own family company, sold it to a trading house, and then moved back to New York and wound up starting a fashion company initially, which was to help recycle and upcycle waste fabric from 7th Avenue towards these one-off garment creations that I had at that point. That led to me talking more about environmental issues on garments, and I started illustrating prints for my garments. And then that led to maybe I could use this to communicate to the masses directly and just use the conduits for mass media advertising, but for sustainable development and social justice and environmental stewardship. So I constantly veered what was available to me, what I was passionate about, and what I had the skill sets for toward leveraging conduits in an unconventional way. And that often intersected with technology because, billboards is technology, like it is digital. And for that, you need to know how to animate and how to create content for it that would fit the parameters of the output, right? And then that led to working with different team members and working in new technologies as technologies evolved with the need for communications to get more immersive, more sensorially interactive and more real time. And so when we started, I was just creating still images, right, that were graphic elements that would convey a complex narrative in a glimpse, because that was the Twitter generation. We'd just come out with the 140 characters and everybody wanted information in a quick clip. And so that's what we were selling. And then I realized, as augmented reality and VR came into play, how are other ways in which we could get people to step into a context that they were not familiar with and to truly understand what it means to be in a refugee crisis context, right? To be displaced. What does that feel like? And that's what VR can do. It can take you into a context that you're just completely oblivious of. And so I think it's very lockstep. If you know how to use tech, it is such a magnificent conduit through which we can convey truly compelling stories that can affect change in real time by affecting people in a poignant and profound way.
And you became a creative director in 2014 in Shark Research Institute.
Yeah, so I actually weirdly have a shark named after me even. I mean, just as an individual specimen, not the species. And I'm in Hawaii, Asher the shark. It's a tiger shark. He's like 15 to 17 feet long and roaming the waters in Kona and the harbor. But and that's because of SRI's connection with me. I was working with different nonprofit institutions in a directorial capacity or a consultancy capacity to help them position their outcomes around hard metrics, because that's something that's definitely lacking in the nonprofit space. We often go after wanting to make people feel like they care, but it's hard to quantify caring. What does that mean, right? How does that affect the end outcome? And with advertising and sales, you can say, hey, I put up this ad in this particular place, 30,000 people saw it, and we saw 25,000 of those people purchase my product. And so that's a clear outcome that you've gone after. It is translated from you creating content, the dollars invested, the energy invested into that content, and the outcome being the sales. But that's not what happens with impact. Impact is often not tangible, and sometimes it's complex or interdependent with other outcomes. So it's very hard to break it down unless you're thinking about it as calls to action at the outset. And so that's where my expertise comes in, is that I literally help them, narrow down their framework, think through their strategy, and then look at execution in a very systematic capacity. And so, yeah, it's really about bringing those horse blinders on and saying, it's not about this vision field, it's about this vision field, and let's go after this and ask for those specific endpoints to be the thing that we're striving for, but also the thing that we can then go back to our donors and communicate, or to our community and communicate that this is what the success state is, this is what the wins are, and this is why you should continue doing this, because this is viable. We have a way to show that this is a proven result. And so, yeah, that's really where my expertise came in. And then also overlapping that with my capacity for storytelling and looking at ways to connect sort of the human emotion component with something as sterile as technology, right? Because tech is just a pathway. It's just a vehicle to deliver something. And what you're ultimately delivering to is human beings. And for that, you need to have emotional awareness and an intuitive understanding of the person that's going to be sitting behind the screen receiving that content. And so an interesting disconnect that exists. And I realize that even within my own company, when I talk to my tech department, they're so technically inclined, they forget the user altogether sometimes. They see more sort of step by step, and they're so progressive in their thinking in terms of this leads to this leads to that, so then is it all stitched through? And I'm thinking about, well, you've forgotten to account for the fact that they won't feel good landing on the screen because it looks like discombobulating and technically overwhelming. So how can I dumb it down and make it more accessible and more intuitive for them, right? So I think it's sort of that leeway that when you're resolving UI UX, that's really what all life is. It's like resolving UI UX. It's like, where is the intersection between form and function, and where do you see the end person who's interacting with that truly leave with the takeaway that you intend for them, right? So it's an important aspect of design thinking and systems thinking is to have intentionality set at the outset, as opposed to like coming up and winging it as you go. So I think being a critical thinker and a designer is a key part in knowing how to leverage technology for an outcome.
So you understand the emotion and the logic both. Logic is
Yeah.
tech and emotion is human.
Yeah. And then ultimately, like, would you really, like, why do you buy something, right? Like when you buy the next piece of tech, it's because you feel like you're going to love it, or it incites you or excites you in some way that's completely emotional. Like, yeah, you can be rational and say, I can use it, but you buy it because it's cool. And cool is not really like anything beyond a human state of being, right? So I think it's about understanding what makes us tick and why we behave. And that's really what Web3 is about as well. It's about behavioral interaction. It's not about just looking at putting content out for its own sake and people can ingest it as they get exposed to it. There's a level of intentionality and curation behind how content gets presented in today's world. And I think that's phenomenal. And there's also democratic access. Everybody gets to feed into the content, to shape the content. And yes, in the previous iteration, that's led to a lot of misinformation. So people don't know, we're still arguing about climate change when clearly there's enough evidence that presents itself showing that the world is in a steady state of decline that is being accelerated by our anthropomorphic activities and anthropocentric activities. And so I think, being conscious of the fact that things that are emulating us are perpetrating more of our both positive and negative outputs, result in systems that scale who we inherently are, right? So if you're a hot mess on the inside, the world is going to be a hot mess, and exponentially so, because the technology is only going to scale who we are and put more of our rubbish out there. And so I think one of the things that is genuinely missing is that people don't realize that they haven't gone inward and done the self-work, and they're busy trying to solve for the world's problems, but the world's problems only exist because you're a problem yourself, right? And the technology is just a conduit that's enabling that and catalyzing more of that. So I think mindfulness is a huge part of it. I mean, you live in India. I think like if you have sort of an awareness of Eastern spirituality, that's an inherent practice, right? Like having some semblance of self-awareness and mindfulness is a huge part of everyday reality. And tech can only do so much. It can't solve for our inability to be in contact with our own being.
And you worked as a creative manager in Thinking Animals.
Yeah, so Thinking Animals occurred when a friend of mine got in contact with me through TED. There was a community in New York. We met like every week to have conversations in the salon style convening, and we discussed about the fact that animals are highly cognitive sentient creatures. Their behaviors are something that we can learn a lot from, and especially because of the level of innovation that occurs in biomimicry and technology that can be created off the templates of animal behavior, animal outputs, animal sensorial capacities is exponential. Like we have LED screens that can have the pixel ratios they have because we can take lessons from the way, I don't know if you know what It's a type of cephalopod. The cuttlefish has a unique way of releasing color to camouflage on its skin. And octopi do that too. Octopuses do that too. I don't never know the plural of octopus, but octopuses do that too. So you actually see them release color and then shrink color through chromatophores. And that's what I think either Philips or one of the tech companies emulates the same principle as a cuttlefish. So, there's an amazing amount of information we can learn from nature and then use that to our advantage. Even looking at how satellites fold and unfold out in the world, you can take lessons from origami, which we again take as inspirations from nature and how nature folds into itself, like how leaves fold and expand when they come in contact with sunshine or with morning dew, and like the unfurling of flower petals and how flowers are arranged, right? Like it's the same sort of mathematical premise, and nature has designed itself so elegantly that if we were to destroy it, we destroy the very integrity from which we exist, right? That we came into existence, which means we destroy the capacity for us to be able to innovate and to be able to improve upon what we think is a viable way to exist, which it has been largely disconnected from nature. We think we're apart from instead of a part of. But I think tech that has taken us away from can bring us back to. And we're seeing more and more examples of that now than ever before. And I do believe that we are at a interesting precipice where we are going to go one of two ways. Either we completely destroy the world and it's a dystopian future like the Matrix, where we live in a completely deluded metaverse, alternative to the reality that we have completely denuded by choice. Or we choose to use the technologies and the awareness and the science we have today and protect the resources that we learn so much from and can leverage to create even better technologies as we move forward. And I really hope that we move towards the nature-based solutions as opposed to thinking nature is dispensable and disposable.
Nice. And you worked as a CEO for Bridge Global.
Yeah, so that's actually a funny gig. So with Thinking Animals, just to cap that off, the reason I got behind them is because I think we can learn a lot from animals and the way they think and the way they behave. And the reason I got into this new company with Bridger Global, that was because I was walking down the sidewalk, and I'm very extroverted in terms of connecting and networking. And so I met a lot of people very quickly in town in Montana, and I came here 2 years ago because I wanted to take a break from New York, and I'd been there for well over 18 years and just hit a cap. When you hear another double parked FedEx truck screaming at you, you're like, I'm done with this noise level and I just want peace. So I moved on a whim. And in Montana, I made a lot of connections. And when I was walking down the street, one person didn't know who I was and knew the rest of the community I was hanging out with. And so he was like, who's this person? And he found out quickly what I do and what my background was in. And he asked me to initially be on his board of his tech company. And then it led to further conversation that led to him asking me to be a CSO. And what I think the world needs more of is CEOs who are CSOs, with their initial integrity being aligned with sustainability as an outcome and not being sociopathic and thinking that everything is expendable and exploitable in order to achieve a bottom line, right? That somehow that is the only priority, and that's not the case at all. And it's not even what the consumers are looking for anymore. So the markets have shifted, and I think the kind of CEO the world needs now is someone who is deeply mindful and holistic in their approach. And that's what I pitched them, and they gave me the job. So they're being the CEO of that tech startup. We had a difference of opinions. I'm very honest to a fault, and I speak my mind very, very candidly, which may not always sit well with people, and that's fine because everyone has a place in the world, and I'll find my own. And so I told the founder that the way he was thinking was very self-oriented. It was very selfish. And not looking out for the team or for the investors. And I have a very stakeholder mentality. I look at every stakeholder involved in the efforts that are being orchestrated and how can we account for all of them and therefore be whole, right? It's not just about one part, it's about the whole. And I communicated that to the investors because he wasn't of that mentality. He was looking out solely for his stake in the game. And that led to me literally making an announcement in an email saying that I will quit in 2 days and resign from the board and stop being the CEO if they don't have answers for me. And he never answered me. And so I quit. And then the investors quit. And then the rest of the team quit. And so I was like, okay, well, that's that. And then I was waiting for, what was going to be my next iteration of self. And I got a call from the investors and they were like, you need to start something and we'll back you. Right. So it was literally, it's not very often that somebody gets to start a company with money being offered first out. Right. But that was my story, literally because of my integrity and my outspoken tendencies. The investors genuinely believed that I would do right by them. And also my ideas were good and I'm very, very hardworking and driven. So I can accomplish a lot within a short period of time if I'm given the resources. I'm like a racehorse. You can't hold me behind the pen, right? Like I need to run. So the more I'm given rein, the more I run and the more gets accomplished. And so, yeah, they really wanted me to start something. And so I began reaching out to my network, looking at where I could have the maximum impact, and then wound up starting a company that is in the blockchain space. We're a startup that's looking at how we can allow for greater transparency in the consumer spend area, where consumers can see what brands are really allocating their resources toward. And if I, for instance, purchase something, am I really purchasing into this what they're promising, which is that, hey, my shoe was made by women in Guatemala and we really care about these women and we support them by giving 10% of our profit margin to these women. Do they actually do that, or is that just something they say, right? And if so, how far do they give? What do they give? What are they enabling? How have their lives gotten better in Guatemala because of this company? And is it a true partnership, or is it still marginalizing and using or not even using, exploiting the women to get a product to market at cost without accounting for their livelihoods in the right way? And that's all been part of the paradigm in the past, but it's not the way many companies are showing up now. So those companies that are showing up in the right way deserve the opportunity to be able to tell their story with integrity. And so advertising thus far is skewed in disfavor of smaller companies that are sustainable because with digital marketing spend, you don't get the eyeballs you need, and you're competing against much larger firms that have much larger resources. And so you're constantly left with smaller market share. And we figured advertising is not the only way a brand can get its message out. So we're creating a platform where a brand with purpose can get its message out by showing up, by taking action. And blockchain will allow for every one of those transactions to be monitored and recorded. And consumers get to see that when they purchase something, that the money actually does go to the Guatemalan women. And it's not just kept by the brand and written as a tax deduction at the end of the year when they feel it's convenient to their bottom line, right? So it's about, is there genuine partnership being provided, or is it just a matter of using and throwing people and resources as it benefits a bottom line? And that's really what I care to hold accountable.
You're a public speaker and workshops at Power Powell Speaker Management.
Oh, so, and yeah, that was an entity that was managing my speaking engagements for a while. They're not at present, but because I haven't had time to give talks, because when you're literally, if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur and kicking off a startup, know that you have no time. Like, there's literally no life. I didn't even realize it's worse than having a child. And I'm glad I don't have a child, because this is my kid. It's all hours, right? I work from the moment I wake up at 5 a.m. until midnight, until I crash. And then the next day again, and the next day again. There's no weekends, there's no holidays, there's nothing. It's just the company is all I do. And that's just what is needed to get it off the ground, to get the product to market, to get it to then have product market fit. Everything requires active participation every day and with your entire team, right? So I love it. I thrive in it. Some days I get exhausted. There is burnout. There is founder fatigue, but I really enjoy being able to get a solution I strongly believe in to market in the way, with the integrity that I envisioned it. And in terms of the speaking engagements, that's starting up again. I'm giving a talk next month at the Women Trailblazers Festival that's hosted by Explore by the Seat of Your Pants. It's a spin-off from National Geographic, founded by Joe Grabowski, who's another National Geographic explorer and a teacher, and also a TED Fellow, I think. And so he's orchestrating these unique events that show women in STEAM making a difference in the world. And I think that's a huge and important focus, because women in tech is actually an incredibly marginal community. We get the least amount of funding of all of the startups out there. Female-led startups get the least funding. We are a minority on so many accounts. And on top of that, being a woman of color, that's another minority ticket, and so it's like everything that makes you not a white man inhibits you from being able to have the kind of success that the privileged white male can have in the space, which is unfortunate that that's what it has trended toward. But even as of 2021, if you look at the statistics of funding that was allocated and how much went to female-led startups, it is appalling, 2.6% or less. So it's really ridiculous. Having said that, we're expected to bootstrap. We hit revenue faster, and we hit more revenue than than most male-funded startups that don't have to bootstrap and don't have to justify themselves every step of the way while getting to market. So it's an interesting environment to fight it out in. But I mean, if you are a resilient fighter, then you will show up to the ring every day, to the arena every day, and fight and throw the next punch. So that's what I do daily.
Great. And right now, and also you worked 12 years, 2 months at Yoke and Anchor LLC.
Oh no, that's another company I run. That's just my own company. It's the conduit through which I can deliver my my previous services, which was to work with brands on a consultancy basis and help them figure out their communication strategies, or serve as an art director, or help them look at their strategy and mass media communications efforts that they are spearheading. And if the content could be more aligned with efforts that would result in systemic shifts for either social or environmental benefit for the collective. So I still do that on the side when I get the time. I'm currently working on one contract with IUCN. We're looking at Planet on the Move, which is about migrations around the world, and that it's inherent to the system. So what we really need to look at is not the concept of a refugee or a migratory entity as being a problem set. It is sort of the inherent and natural state for any organism or expression of being to exist in, is a state of movement. And then to look at the fact that any systems that we have put in place, either as infrastructure or through technology, that inhibits movement is actually unnatural. So that's the next project I'm working on the side. I mean, I get a lot of things going on all the time. It's a matter of juggling and not having much sleep and just loving what you do. So I say that the three things that you should like bring into life every day is passion, purpose, and presence. Like, be available to the moment at hand, know why you're showing up, and be incredibly passionate about it. Because if you have those three things, then every day is just like play, it doesn't feel like work. It just feels, I don't know, like it's like a song and a dance. I wake up every day and I can't wait for the day. So yeah, I would urge everybody to enjoy being present for their opportunities.
So as a CEO and founder of IncOperate, what you want to do?
So right now we're in product iteration. We're just developing our MVP, which will launch by March. So I'll be sure to send you a link to that. So in terms of the long vision, what I would like to do is build this entire ecosystem of applications we have in mind that would interact with one another to create a community that is accountable to one another, transparent about their dollar spend and dollar allocations, and is capable of working consistently and cohesively towards funding the change that would benefit the whole. And that means being responsible as the parts that are showing up to that whole, right? So I think any way that I could allow for streamlined access to empowering that whole into existence and realizing that you as a part can make a huge difference on a daily basis. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter if you have $100 in your pocket or $1 in your pocket, that you can show up to be a change agent is a deeply empowering thing. And I think today's technology allows for that level of democratic empowerment from the bottom up. And I would really like to see more people show that level of stewardship, connection, and compassion every day. Not what you would expect from a technology entrepreneur, because I know like everybody's running after the bottom line and after the ROI, and it's like about the exits. But I think the integrity with which you show up matters first and foremost. If not, why even start yet another thing that's going to be corrosive and erosive of the world? I'm not from that premise. But having said that, we do know how our revenue models are working. We do have a business strategy of how that's going to be monetized and benefit our investors. So I wouldn't say be, completely ignorant of how your business can be a business. That definitely matters, but that's not why your business exists, right? So yeah, I think the why matters.
So how this understanding about the complete the reason for the purpose why we are here, you understand about the nature and how these species are created, and I can understand you care all things in the nature, and you understand technology, why how it is helping human beings to connect with each other, and the purpose of it. So how you are integrating both, and what you want to do with both the knowledge that you have on both aspects.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, I think the way my past knowledge base of working in conservation, sustainable development, and engaging the public around topics that come to impact the whole, which they belong to, and showing them how they can be enabled to affect change for the better for that whole. Connecting that to the through line of what I'm doing now, the way I do that is it's a daily thing, right? So like right now I'm on the boards of 3 different nonprofit organizations that I believe in. And I just got off a board meeting this morning. And as a tech entrepreneur, you tend to think more systematically. I mean, whether you were initially that way or not, the protocols within which you play automatically reframe you. So now I think about it in terms of RACI charts. You think about it in Kanban. You think about it in daily Scrum, right? So it's all like regimented. It goes from epics, then you break it down to like into user stories. So like you have a very systematic way of approaching how content gets iterated, worked out, and then put into the world, how it gets feedback and then revised and put back out into the world. So it's sort of like the closest thing I could compare the way you work in technology is to look at evolution. Like we literally emulate evolution in technology daily because it is about performance, feedback, and revision, right? So something performs and then you look at what feedback it gets from the world around from having interacted, and then you have to revise it to better adapt to that instance. And so I think the way I'm able to leverage what I've known is looking at the natural world and everything I've gotten to experience from being out in it, like having worked years on end in the field, in Africa, in the Amazon basin. Like I've gotten the opportunity to go to some extraordinary places in the world and see some inimitable life flourish, both flora and fauna, trees that are so old, like, hundreds and hundreds of years old, towering above you. It gives you a sense of true belonging that I think is irreplaceable, and we should not lose that. It's a magic that we would end up losing in the world around us. And if I can use technology to get more people to understand and connect to this magic and to recognize the patterns in nature that we can use in technology for our collective well-being and evolution, continued evolution, then I think that's something worth doing daily, because that's really what I wake up to deliver on.
So it's amazing. Your previous work is inspiring for a lot of technologists because you work very close to the nature. You know, not everybody gets that chance. You saw the real things. You understood. Your observation power and your absorption power helped you in understanding and collecting a lot of the natural resources and the the pure things in the nature. You saw with your eyes, you listened with your ear. So can I say you're going to put all this data, all this information in the technology development?
Yeah, in the coming years, yeah, you can definitely keep tabs on me for it, because if there's one thing that I want in this world, it's to protect nature. Like, I don't think it can in any capacity be overridden, because it's where we come from, it's who we are. You wouldn't be in existence if nature didn't exist. It's how we evolved into expression. So to take the very pages from our own storybook and to rip out all those pages and say that last page alone can exist, that's ridiculous. Where's the rest of the book? We're destroying our own book of life. And I don't think that's something that I can abide. It sends me into a deep rage to see life being destroyed. So yeah, it comes from a very raw and real place where I genuinely care about the state of the world and being able to use every means I have to protect that state of integrity and wholeness that was brought into expression well before us and during us, and it will continue to exist well after us. So it's a matter of whether we want to preserve ourselves with any self intelligence or not. And I think we pride ourselves in being incredibly intelligent species, but a crocodile with a brain the size of a walnut has coexisted with everything for over 200 million years, and we've been here a fraction of the time, and we've already destroyed everything that we depend on. So what's more intelligent, a crocodile or us? Like, really? I don't know. Deeply questionable.
So coming out of the topic, because you understand both the things, which is the advanced world and the natural world. So what do you say about AI?
I think artificial intelligence it definitely has application. I think it's interesting that we're able to allow for systems that can be self-discerning and self-sufficient, right? In terms of design thinking, that is where it is probably most resolved, but it's also not the same thing as having a soul. I'm sorry. Like, if you were to look at consciousness on a deeper understanding, consciousness is not the same as being in a state of function, right? It's not just the mind that makes us who we are. And I think people who are like very disconnected from a state of being that is true, even if you're not thinking, you're still there, right? So you're there, even if you are not actively processing, even if you're not actively firing in your neurons, you're still present. That presence, that consciousness is not the same thing as artificial intelligence. And I think we take that for granted. I don't think we understand what it means to be soul consciousness. I don't think we understand what it means to be in a state of true awareness. And I don't think very many people even get that. So this is a conversation of mindfulness. This is a conversation about spiritual practice, about having a greater understanding of self without the ego, without being in a state of me, I feel this, I'm thinking this, I'm doing this. Who the hell cares? Like, without the I, who are you? And you are there. Like, if you're not making I statements, you still exist. So I don't think enough people tap into that level of depth within self to understand self enough, to value that enough, to value human living enough, to value life enough, to be able to distinguish that from what we give rise to synthetically through artifice. Artifice is always going to be like missing that deeper state of awareness that can look within, that can contemplate, that can introspect. Even if it can be generated and it can ask questions of itself, it's like so nascent and so basic compared to where we're at, if we are willing to look within in that way. But I don't think we get it, right? Most people don't wake up and look within in that way. So that's a much bigger conversation that's more existential. But I would highly recommend people look up, oh my God, I'm getting calls, sorry. Sorry if that interrupted. I got a call right now. But no, I would say like people need to like look at Eckhart Tolle. Like, I don't know if you've read his books, The New Earth. Read that book. I would highly recommend it. Look up Alan Watts, look up literally any philosopher or existential individual or spiritual leader out there, like Dalai Lama. Like, look at anyone who's speaking from a greater sense of self-awareness. That will never come anywhere close to technology asking questions of itself. It's not the same thing. And I will never consider it the same thing. So, I mean, I'm just cut that way. Yes, maybe we can allow for it to get there eventually, but we're already there. So why not let us go inward further than wait for technology to get where we are already? We're inherently already there. So I don't know. I find it kind of ridiculous that we resort to tech being put on a pedestal and worshipped at this altar at the very diminishment of our own being, which is ridiculous to me.
You understand networking. You understood the connectivity between things. What do you say? What do you say about when it comes to your job right now? You are into creating applications and trying to connect with the human beings. So can I say all the information that you collected in your entire life, in your work experience, the tech and non-technical experience of yours, you integrate both and you put on the user interfaces of the applications with which any human from anywhere on this planet can connect and communicate with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting because when you create something, you're thinking through every screen, right? Like something as simple as if a password fails, the failure state has to be communicated. It has to be thought of by us, right? Even though it's like you can't take anything for granted is what I'm saying. So if you're resolving for every state, for every expression of this portal, of this platform, then you definitely do put a lot of who you are into it. Having said that, I think in terms of its functional outputs, its true integrity lies in its capacity to give back and to ensure that giving back occurs. And so that comes from my own bias for wanting to give back, right? I believe in showing up and being responsible for the world that we live in and for supporting each other, and not being mindless and oblivious of the people who don't have access to fresh water, who don't have the capacity to get an education, who don't have food, in their bellies tomorrow morning. We take so much for granted and we prioritize things that genuinely don't matter at the cost of things that truly do. And that's not something that I would allow myself, and by extension, any effort I get involved in, is to create blind spots that exist at the cost of things that matter.
So at last, your final words to the world who is watching and listening to our conversation from anywhere on this planet.
I would say give a shit, like care about the world, care about one another, care about people, like care about everything in your backyard, because it is literally about how far you're willing to show up for any of it. If you were to say, it's sort of like the sphere of influence. If you were to say that when I wake up, I'm only responsible for me, then you're only responsible for you and you only look out for you and it's all about you. If you wake up and you think, oh, I care about me and my family, you wake up and you look out for your family, right? It becomes part of your daily mindset of how you show up, how you prioritize your time, how you allocate your resources. All of it is influenced by that one construct. It's just a thought that I care about my family. and it's just an emotion, right? But those two things can be reframed. It can exist or not exist. You can just as easily not care about your family and just show up for me, and like don't care what happens to your kids. And a lot of people do that too, right? And the kids have therapists because they have to deal with all the issues that they developed because their parents were completely negligent. So I think, that's really what gets scaled up when you look at your backyard. Do I care about my neighbor dumping garbage in my backyard? Yes, I do. So then I wake up and I look at that. If I care about what my neighbor does in his backyard as well, then I will speak out for that backyard too. If I care about what happens in the whole neighborhood, then I'm looking out for my neighborhood. If I care about what happens in this county, then I speak out for the county. I go to the town hall hearings. If I care about what happens in this country, then I speak up and vote and show up and participate for the country. If I care about the world, then you show agency and willpower and affect change in the world. It really is about just a construct. If you don't care, you can't do shit. So just care. Wake up and be accountable to everything, because you are, whether you know it or not. When you brush your teeth and you spit that toothpaste into your sink, it's going down the drain, it's going into the rivers, it's going into the groundwater, it's going into the oceans. So if it contains plastic microbeads in the toothpaste formula, then you're putting those microbeads into the ocean, and it's affecting wildlife, it's affecting sushi, it's affecting people consuming fish in the local neighborhoods along the fishing villages. It affects everybody. So you just choosing the wrong brand of toothbrush is causing ripples across the world. You may not know this, but the minute you do, what are you going to do about it? Right? So that's when I think each consumer has the capacity to vote wisely in the choices they make, and also to show up for a much bigger footprint. But the thing is that there has to be the awareness to show up for that footprint, right? You have to look and say, hey, I care that that person is doing something there that I can do something about. But if you don't show that level of involvement and responsibility, then nothing's ever going to change. So I think each person needs to take it upon themselves, be an entrepreneur, start today. If you want to, go and take a new course, start today. Stop waiting, stop looking for a sign, stop dilly-dallying, like stop procrastinating, because the world needs you to show up now. There is no later. So show up now.
I'm sure your words will affect a lot of minds and make a lot of people think and helps them in developing themselves. At the same time, the examples that you give really makes them think and do better things and reduce the bad things and the negative energy on the planet. And at least if it affects few people in the world, it will be a big thing through my medium.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really believe literally every domino has consequence. So even if it's one person we reach through this conversation, that's tremendous, because that one person waking up and doing something slightly different tomorrow that's for the betterment of the whole makes a difference to me. So I think go after every single mind, every single individual that can count and can make a difference tomorrow, or better yet now.
So, what do you say to the technologists who are watching and listening to this?
I would say look at your presence in the world outside of technology and use your technology to better the context outside of it, not to be so trapped within the technology that you lose sight of the tangible that you belong to on a daily basis.
Awesome. So, at last, what do you say about my work as a person who worked in different fields? You know about a lot of things.
I would say that I think it's important that you feel called to have the kind of conversations that you're having, because it's important to engage in dialogue with people from different walks of life and to acquire as many different perspectives and to be able to offer a conduit through which you share those perspectives outward with others. I think that's a pretty gracious thing to be doing. So, I think you should keep doing what you're doing.
Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And also, can I put this video and audio clip on my podcast, social media, internet,
Yeah, sure.
website, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Asha. Keep going,
Yeah. Thanks,
keep
I
doing
really
what you
appreciate
love,
it. Yeah.
and keep inspiring people like this.
Of course. You take care. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Bye.